You know, it's kind of funny because Tower of God is obviously such an important and popular title on Webtoon and in this circle, in this community that we have. Everybody talks about it, we all theorize about the characters and the story and everything, all these reaction videos going around. And yet, I don't see a lot of people actually talking about the source of the title, right? Like Tower of God, we just call it Tower of God and we don't really think about it. But when we say Tower of God, who is the god? And at first I thought maybe this is just something that I wasn't aware of, like maybe I'm out of the loop and everybody else knows who the god of the tower is supposed to be in the title, but I posted on my community tab and everybody had a different answer. It's really cool. Well, not everybody, right? But there's a lot of diverse answers and a lot of interesting theories and sort of responses that I got, so I wanted to make a video talking about what you guys suggested, who I think is probably the god referenced in Tower of God. And while I talk about these, I'll show them on screen. I'm not gonna be reading all the comments, but just showing them so you can get an idea. So the first one was the most popular answer, and that was obviously, you know, the most serious answer, and that's Lord PARACULE, because PARACULE is obviously in human form right now, but if we saw PARACULE transcended and in his god form, we'd all go blind from the shock, quite honestly. I kid you not, like 50% of the replies are PARACULE, and I was like, okay, am I gonna get a serious answer out of this? In all seriousness though, next would be Jahad. So Jahad is somebody who is maybe the most obvious in universe, right? Because Jahad is the king of the tower, and being the king of this tower, he's in control of everything. What he says goes, no matter what, right? You have the 3 lords, you have the 10 family heads and all these other important people, but if Jahad says something, there's no like people to be like, well, actually, king, we can't do. No, it's like if he says something, you have to do it or you're gonna die. And in that sense, like that is a very godlike power. And obviously, being an irregular and being the first person along with his companions to ever enter the tower from the outside, that does seem like godlike status. You know, the irregulars are often called gods, and Jahad being the king of the tower, an irregular, in charge of everything, just his whole demeanor and his existence, it does seem plausible that he would potentially be the god in Tower of God, especially if there's some kind of like backstory for Jahad or some reasoning for the things that he's doing, and perhaps ultimately he isn't really the villain that we think he is, you know? And perhaps this entire story, we think it revolves around someone like Bomb, but really Jahad is at its center in some way. Speaking of Bomb, the next obvious answer would be Bomb, you know? Bomb is somebody who, when we started this story, he was an ordinary kid, but we soon find out he's gifted, right? He's an irregular who is very, very gifted. His main thing is he's able to pick up on things really, really fast, and therefore he's able to learn so many different abilities, able to get so many different power-ups, and it makes Bomb quite a godlike figure in his own way. And of course, as he's climbing, that's sort of the theme of this story even, is that should Bomb be the god that Fug and all the people want him to be, or should he be his own person? It's a conflict that he's always had, you know, ever since season 2. He often has conversations with Kun about it, you know. Kun's often saying you should just be yourself, you know? You have no obligation, right? Save whoever you want to save, like that sort of thing. And that is a very important part of this story. And I could see a situation where Bomb, you know, he decides, I'm myself, I'm human, but he has to become that god, and he's like chained down by it. And it could be a really depressing ending when Bomb ends up sort of like Jahad, maybe not in an evil sense or like a bad way, but where he is the god of the tower, even though he doesn't want to be, you know? And I think that would hit so hard. You know, we find out that this is Bomb's tower, he becomes the new king, or whatever. The cycle starts all over again. Maybe not as bad as Jahad, but a cycle where somebody has to take the reins. Somebody has to be the one at the top in control of everything, even if it's not always pretty. I could see that being the case for Jahad right now, and for Bomb potentially in the future. I saw some people say Wangnan, you know, and Wangnan is an interesting topic because obviously Wangnan wants to become king. So I could see a case where maybe Wangnan does become king at the end of the story. You know, that'd be a great story. The weakest guy ends up becoming the king of everybody in some way. I'm not really sure. There's obviously more to Wangnan than we know currently. But I don't think Tower of God refers to Wangnan. I just don't see that being the case, unless there's some sort of plot twist where Wangnan and Bomb have this like face-off or something, not like physically, but maybe they do become enemies, and the sad story ends when Bomb has to step down. I don't know, my mind is swimming right now. What about Pentaminum, right, or Phantaminum, depending on the translation? This does seem like an obvious answer because Pentaminum is the strongest irregular, and even out of all the regulars and irregulars and whoever has ever entered the tower, he is the strongest being to ever exist. He's an Axis. If you don't know what Axes are, there's a whole video I made about Pentaminum where I sort of break it down a little bit more, but basically he's sort of a very important piece and fabric of the entire universe of Tower of God, you know? And he basically is one of the centerpieces of everything. And one of the popular theories is that Pentaminum is sort of the story writer for Tower of God. It's so hard to explain, just watch the video, because even I get confused about it, of course. But I don't know, like, he's a character that probably will never show up, right? Like, he's somebody who I don't see being like, you know, irregular of the tower, Pentaminum, like when he's introduced. I see him more as a mythical figure of legend that once showed up, once did these things, and he's an important part of this universe even if he never actually does show up. What is interesting though is that Yuri did meet him, which is kind of wild. Then there's Enryu, who's the number 2 of the tower, and this doesn't seem plausible to me because if Tower of God is going to refer to like a god being an irregular, wouldn't it probably refer to Enryu's god, who is the outside god? The outside god is another popular answer that I saw, and that's more plausible to me than Enryu, because Enryu serves the outside god, so it'd be kind of strange if Tower of God referred to the guy who served a god. Or maybe that's like the irony of everything, I'm not really sure. But even so, I should say, the outside god, to me, how is he the god of the tower if he's on the outside? You know what I mean? Like, it's Tower of God, and yet we're talking about a god that isn't even in the tower. So to me, well, maybe, I don't know, maybe the outside god is really connected to the tower in some way. Maybe this outside god is the one who created the tower. Maybe that's why he's the god. And maybe, and I'm gonna talk about one comment in particular that really caught my attention, maybe the tower itself was built to reach the outside god. I also saw some comments about Mixeth and Hedon, and these two characters, in my opinion, Mixeth and Hedon, I think they're two of the most fascinating characters in the entire story, dude. Like, Hedon is the person who you first meet as an irregular, and the first person we first met when Bomb entered the tower, alongside Rachel, of course. And he's somebody who is frequently mentioned to be the true god of the tower. That to me is pretty damning evidence, right? Like with Thorian, he was like, when he was talking about how he's selected as a regular in his experiments, he said when he saw Hedon, he was greeted by the true god of this tower, right? And just considering the fact that Hedon is called the caretaker of the tower, he was the first one that Jahad and his friends met, that's confirmed. He has the ability to teleport anywhere in the tower. He's like the original OG administrator. Like, this guy is such a big deal. My theory has always been that Jahad isn't really going to be the ultimate big bad. It could be someone like Hedon, you know? Maybe Hedon was pulling all the strings with Rachel and Ghost and all these things. So Hedon being Tower of God, like Hedon being the god, maybe, you know, I like my theories and my thoughts and everybody's thoughts about Hedon being truly important to this story, but I don't know if that necessarily means he's the god in Tower of God. Although, it would be pretty ironic because he was, like I said, the first character we met in the tower. Mixeth is a god in his own right. He's the founder of the workshop inside the tower. And if you don't know, I made a whole video on the workshop. If you don't know, the workshop exists outside the tower as well. So it's like such a gigantic organization that just blows past everybody's minds. We can't even fathom how insane the workshop is, right? Like, even after the workshop battle, the workshop has played a huge role in everything in this story. The workshop it's crazy, man. The workshop's pretty messed up. So Mixeth really is a god in his own right. He also learned how to create life, which is something that is commonly associated with like godlike figures like Enryu, right? It's hinted that Enryu can create life out of Shinsu. Mixeth can do the same thing. He can create life. He created a bunch of his children, you know? It's like these like robotic, I don't really know. We don't have a huge description on his kids, but Mai, and all those kids, along with Flux, who's one of the 3 lords, they were created by Mixeth, like through the workshop. When I say created his kids, I mean it in like a literal, never mind. So those are the biggest contenders, and some of them seem to be less likely, but anything on this list could happen. Like anything that I just mentioned could feasibly happen. A couple of other interesting like sort of things that I gathered from what you guys were saying and from my own thoughts was that maybe it's ambiguous. Like maybe everybody thinks that they're going to be the god when they reach the top, you know? And I think that could make for a really good story as well. Like there is no god. There is no the god in this tower that everybody prays to and like reaches to. It's like you think you're the god, or like you maybe have the responsibility to be the god. It could go either way. Like you have the responsibility to be the god, like for Bomb, or maybe everybody is like, screw that, I'm my own god. Like I'm gonna climb the tower and be god once I reach the top. There's so much that you could unpack there about there being some sort of ambiguous god. Maybe there really isn't a god and everybody thinks of the god as something different. And maybe this final answer here, maybe there is a god at the top and we just don't know who it is. And maybe it ties into Jahad's choices and why he stopped climbing. Maybe there really is a god. And it's just somebody that's never been met before, or maybe alluded to, or maybe someone is secretly this god and we don't know about it, like Pentamenim or Enryu or the outside god. You know, maybe it's a god that we just don't even know about, which is also really interesting. All right, I want to talk about this comment from All Might here. All Might himself is a fan of the channel. That's freaking awesome. Talking about a theory from a German YouTuber, Badeq. I think Badeq Theory is the channel. I recommend it. I don't speak German, but he makes some good videos, so I'll put the link down below to his channel. And the comment says here, the tower was made from an axis to be devoured from the irregular who climbs the tower to the top and become an axis himself in the end. Jahad, after knowing about the truth, didn't want to climb the tower anymore, and that's why he closed the upper floors. All the devoured abilities from White and Bomb are a hint to it. So the irregular who climbs it to the top has to devour all the people in the tower or kill them to become an axis. Don't worry about your English, it's great, and you can check out the video. I'll also put the video down below, which also has English subs apparently, which is fantastic. So this is an interesting theory. I'm not really sure about the whole like devouring all the people thing, but I do think the devour ability could connect to becoming an axis in some way, and maybe that's the tower's purpose. Like, why does the tower even exist? It's existed for like 20,000 years or more, ever since Jahad and them entered, but why is it there? There has to be some kind of purpose. Maybe it's to craft an axis or craft somebody with the ability to do something. My water bottle's moving on its own. I'm freaking terrified. I don't know. There's a ton of different possibilities. This is such an interesting topic, and more than anything, I want to know what you guys think, because I think these are some great ideas. And do you have anything to add to these ideas? Do you have some ideas of your own, perhaps, about who could be the god? Or maybe you want to add on to something that I talked about? Let me know in the comments down below. Let's have a conversation about it. And if you like Tower of God, subscribe to the channel, like the video if you want to see more content just like this. And we have a Discord server where you can also continue the conversation. The link is down below. And pay attention to my community tab, because I like to pose questions like this. I think it's super fascinating. So one way to keep up on like the questions and the videos that I'm going to be making is to like stay active on the channel, check out the community tab and all that stuff. Patrons, you guys are amazing as usual. Thank you so much for your contributions, especially Flidan, Syed Masood, and TechCrazy80, who are the sponsors of the channel. You guys are awesome. You suggest videos all the time, which are fantastic. I'm making a video soon, a Tower of God lore on a certain character that has been requested so much. So if you want to support the channel in that way, the link is also down below. And with that, I'll see you guys in my next Tower of God discussion video. Take care.